All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. I've had chickens in my backyard for the last several years, and it's something I'm so passionate about. I talk to people about it regularly, but at the end of the day, I'm not the expert, which is why I've sought the advice of an expert. And today we have Ingrid Dimock joining us from City Chicks. Ingrid, thank you so much for your time.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
It's so cool to have you here because I've been following you on Facebook for a while, on your page for City Chicks, and every now and then when I see a live video popping up, it's always so exciting to watch because I could see you're just so passionate about chickens, and there's always something to talk about. There's always something to share with people. I guess if you can start off just by giving us a brief rundown of the City Chicks story,
Sure.
and who you are. And
yeah, great. Well, may I just segue before I go into that about the videos on Facebook?
Yes,
they're normally a very sweaty-faced agricultural look, and they're very raw. There's no photo production, cinematography, nothing. It is as raw as can be, which I think people like because they can actually see, crouching down and hitting your head on the entrance of the coop and things like that. So they can go, yeah, I do that too. Funny that.
They're good.
But City Chicks started in 2007 in my backyard in the Gap, and it came about as an idea for a new business for myself. And I had toddlers at that stage, and I was looking for something that was just a little bit different to, say, selling Enyo. And I read a Fin Review article on a weekend, and it was about this fellow by the name of Ingham, who has a business in Sydney called Chook. And I was really quite intrigued. And he had done something where city families could hire a couple of chickens and an eco coop and a bit of food and take it home and just give it a go. Because Sydney Council conditions around chicken owning at that stage were pretty tough. And so the chicken industry was not feeling, they weren't getting any people coming in at all. And so Mr. Ingham said, oh, well, let's try this as a concept and see whether that attracts more people to give it a go. And anyway, it was a nice, quirky business. And in fact, he's still going with the same concept sort of 15 years on. But the idea just sparked something in me, and I thought, wow, that's so cool. That's very different. It's a bit quirky. It's like me. And I thought, I wonder where I can buy chicken from that I could sell to someone. I wonder where I can get a chicken coop from that I could sell to someone. So I sat down with my husband at the time, and he's an engineer, and I said, look, can you just, in your spare time, make me a chicken coop? So he completely over-engineered about 10 or 20, and I found a fellow who could sell me chickens, and I learned a lot about what you needed to own chickens, probably the same journey that a lot of our customers do now to go through. And then I just started, and then I just put my word out through neighbours and friends, and then contacted the local Quest newspaper. If you remember, every suburb has their own little local rag, and phoned them up, and they did an interview and took some photographs, and the business has just gone sort of, a bit crazy ever since. So it's gone from back in those days, 1 or 2 days a week to 4 or 5 days a week, to me moving the business out to Pullen Vale for a number of years where we could lease a nursery site, and then growing again to another level where we're now out at Samford Valley on Mount Glorious Road, embedded within a lifestyle centre. So there's a nursery on site and a cafe and a gift shop and our chicken business. So you can now come into an air-conditioned shop to learn all about chickens and touch and feel everything, and then walk down to our paddock showroom, as I like to call it, where all of our chickens are, and we can talk you through all of the different breeds there. So it's been a really interesting, fun journey. And as I'm getting older, I'm in my mid-50s now, sometimes I'll sit down at the end of a summer's day and think, holy hell, what on earth am I doing here? But most of the time, the joy that it brings me because of the joy that families receive when they get themselves all set up is enough to keep me going, and constantly thinking of new ideas. And that's been an interesting part of this whole journey is whatever trend I tried to predict in my business plan for the bank never goes the way the trend is going to go. And I mean, COVID is a prime example of that, where, we sort of were anticipating certain sales going in certain areas. And then when COVID hit, we thought, oh man, am I allowed to talk about COVID? Is that okay? Because it's an interesting story for us. COVID hit.
Yeah, of course.
COVID hit, and I
as much as everyone's overhearing that word.
Yeah,
no,
yeah, this is a good COVID story though. But and I thought, oh my goodness, everyone's going to be locked down. What are we going to do? We were a bit of a grey area business.
Yep.
We could sort of stay over because we were supplying pet supplies, and in our whole 12 business centre here, there was 2 of us operating only. And the day before, I thought, oh man, I'm going to have to put my staff off. What am I going to do? How am I going to manage all this? And then the next morning of lockdown, the phone started ringing at 9 a.m. and did not stop until December. And in fact, I had to hire more people to come in to manage what was going on. And that phenomenon was just something our industry had never, ever, ever seen before in the decade and a half that I'd been operating in it, and for any of my colleagues anywhere else. So that was quite striking. And what was happening is that initially people were thinking...
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. Initially it was all around eggs. Like, people were frightened that they weren't going to be able to get eggs. But now we've got friends of those thousands of odd people that came in to buy chickens who were coming in from referrals. And so we've, we're picking up a lot more business from that. So it's exciting. It's a really exciting time for us.
Well, I think you brought up a really valid point as well, because with COVID, I think the fact that people started contacting you more is probably to do with the fact that they had more time on their hands because they were at home more often. Because again, like when I talk to people about chickens and I tell them I've got chickens in the backyard, one of the first things I hear a lot is, I've always wanted to do that, Can you sort of explain to us, or to those listening, what's actually involved initially in the initial process? Because sometimes it can come across, some people can sort of assume that there's too much work involved setting things up, and it's just too much work having chickens.
Sure.
And they just don't have the time for it.
Sure. So the first thing we tend to do with our customers, so we do a full qualifying sort of system with people. So say, for example, you came in and you had this idea that there's a little corner in your yard that you want to put some chickens in for eggs, or you've got little children and you feel as though you want to get them off devices and in the backyard with chickens. Say you're looking at that reason for owning them, then we qualify you. So we might say, well, what's the goal? Do you want eggs? And if you want eggs predominantly, then we'll steer you toward a category of chicken. If you're looking for big fat mamas that your grandmother had, then we'll steer you in another direction. And if you're just in a townhouse with a postage stamp backyard, but you still want the experience, then we'd steer you toward another category of chicken again. So that's the first thing we do, is just find out what exactly you're looking for. And sometimes that takes a few minutes to drill down, because people visit friends with chickens like they've done with you, and then they say, oh, I just want to replicate that in my backyard. But, you have to just find out the reason for having them first. And once you've got that, then you can recommend a suitable chicken coop, and then they've got to go and get that, because it's something that we don't really do. We sort of have a couple of chicken coops, but it's not our core business. And and then people can come back and we go through a whole list of products that you need in order to set up a chicken coop and have chickens that have a healthy lifestyle. And the lovely thing about what we do, I think, is that we offer a range of different products, not hundreds, so that you get totally confused and stand there scratching your head. But, you can go for hardcore chemical fast-acting stuff against lice and mites, for example, or you can go for a completely natural range of products if you tend to be sort of having a more of a healthy ethos and wanting to go more of it in an eco-friendly way. So that's really differentiates us to, say, produce shops where they're selling bits and pieces for cats, dogs, fish, chickens, and chickens are only one part of that. What we do is just chickens. That's our core business. Chickens and stingless bees, actually. There are two things that we sell. And
with the setup, I guess, could you sort of walk through that side of things? Because you've got the chook house.
Sure. So you've got the chook house, and if you're in southeast Queensland, snakes and foxes are a big issue. So the wire of the chicken coop needs to be a 1 centimetre diameter wire. That's always what we recommend. And then different to, say, our Victorian cousins, where you have a very cool climate, we always recommend having some type of flooring underneath your chicken coop. And that can just be like large pavers, or it can be a bit of chicken wire, or it can be something else. But you want to have something there to sort of absorb moisture and absorb any smell, because on our 40-degree days, it can end up getting a little bit of odour. And in the city, people are very concerned about that. So if they are able to set that up in that way, then you're not going to have any of those issues.
Okay. And something else that I have as part of my setup, which not many people have actually heard of, and this comes down to the convenience side of things.
Sure.
Having chooks is some feeders. So I've got, for example, there's that, I don't know what it's called, but there's a box basically where the chickens, when they stand on it,
treadle feeder.
the lid opens up and the seeds are there. And the good thing about that, well, the way it was sold to me, is that it stops possums from eating their food at night. And secondly, you don't have to which means you don't have to top up the seeds or, their food as often. And sorry, not seeds. I don't think the pellets.
Step feeders, and I'll tell you a funny story about them. They're the ones, like, if anyone is listening, you step on it, the lid flips open, the chicken, an intelligent chicken can work out where their food is, but you put a little rock on the step first. Otherwise, no chicken's born naturally with that ability to anticipate a step equals food.
Yes.
So you start off with a rock on it with the lid open, and then you take a lighter rock and a lighter rock until the end they work it out. But you can also get 7 pigeons standing on one of those steps, and they've worked out that they can also lift the lid and get at the food, which is really cute. But, those sort of feeders are great. There are lots of different feeders around, but I suppose
there's one for water as well.
Water dispensers and feed. I think you've just got to be mindful that vermin are a big issue here in southeast Queensland. I sound like I'm putting everyone off, and I'm not, but I'm just being realistic. So your drinker and feeder need to be used so that vermin can't access the feed area. And so you can either lift your feeder up off the ground, or you use a step feeder like you have, or you mount something on the wall like a Dynachook feeder, and that way you're going to minimise that potential issue, because it will put people off. If you've got mice and rats happening in your backyard, then families don't like that, and they'll get rid of the chickens as a result. So from the outset, if you're prepared and planned, then you don't end up getting those issues.
Yeah, because I've had a few people say that to me. They go, I heard you get rats if you have chickens. And like for me, again, I've got the feeder, so that basically I just top it up every couple of days.
Sure.
And nothing gets wasted, and that way it stays away. The mice can't get to it, basically. And similar with the water, that's got its own thing, and I only have to top that up every 4 days or so, because the water lasts and it stays fresh.
Yes.
And not contaminated. There's less chance of it being contaminated. And for me, I've noticed as well that I feed them, if I throw vegetables and all the rest, I make sure I do it during the day so that they've eaten it all up before nighttime, so that when they're asleep, the rats can't come and take it, basically.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And as far as where to put a coop as well.
Sure. So
I know councils have their own guidelines.
Yeah, they do have their own guidelines, and you've got to probably just jump on your local city council website first, because they now have dedicated sections on poultry owning. And just find out. So, I mean, you're not going to be able to have a flock of 50 chooks in the backyard, but if you're in Brisbane City Council, you can have up to 6 poultry or fowl, and that includes ducks. You can have a turkey if you want a turkey.
Nice.
Yeah, you can have chickens, all different sorts of chickens if you want that. You can have a goose. And the only hassle you're going to have is if your neighbours do put in a noise complaint. That's why you can't have roosters. But anything else you are able to own. So you can set up a little bit of a mini-ish farm in your backyard as long as you've got the space. And rule of thumb is around 2 square metres per bird in any backyard setting. And that's enough space for one chicken to then peck at the grass or have a little dig, and allows the ground to replenish, to rejuvenate and replenish.
And as far as ongoing is concerned, if we can sort of touch on that as well, because again, apart from what I've mentioned, changing the water, topping up the water every 3 or 4 days, and every couple of days giving them more food.
Yes.
Is there much more than that? Because I know worming is another thing that should be done regularly.
Yes, exactly. And in our climate, worming is to be done every 3 months. But, depending on what product you want to use for your chicken will determine the manner in which you do it. So there is this incredible organic product called diatomaceous earth, or DE or D-earth, which is a Queensland product. And you can add that to the diet of the bird, and it acts like a broom sweeping through the gut, getting rid of worm eggs and toxins and that sort of thing. So you can go in a very holistic manner, which is great, so good for the environment. And or if it's just too much, you can bring your chooks in and we'll worm them for you, or you can use a tablet, or you can add stuff to the water. There are so many different ways that you can maintain the health of your birds. That's just some example. But when you're a chicken owner, there are things that you need to understand, and that is that those chickens will need to be wormed and liced, just like a dog or a cat, every 3 months. Yep. You do need to clean out their watering bowl, just like a dog or a cat or other animal.
Yep.
And but the benefits that you get from your chooks are incredible. And even going into the kitchen, for example, one reason people like to get chickens is because they eat so much of the leftover food. And people sort of think, I don't have enough to give the chickens. I don't have special food for them, like, lettuce and spinach and that sort of thing. And I just go, hold on, that's only a small percentage of what they eat. They're going to eat about 80% of what you've got.
They eat everything.
They eat everything, including salmon and prawn heads. They go crazy for those. And, egg and ham and cheese sandwiches and spaghetti bolognese. And people get quite fascinated that chickens
they
eat
love
chicken.
it. Rice.
Rice. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen a chicken eat long pasta, I mean, it's insane. And mangoes and rock melon and all that sort of stuff. They love it. So people don't realise that they can get rid of a lot of waste which would otherwise go into a plastic bag in a rubbish bin.
These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au. To be honest with you, I see that as one of the benefits of having chooks, because
Totally.
I'm one of those people. I feel guilty throwing food out, even if it's just scraps or whatever it may be. I just feel guilty. So having just going to the backyard and giving it to the chooks, it's actually very satisfying.
Very satisfying. And if you've got kids, I mean, that's their job. And a lot of our customers complain about their kids being so screen time heavy from 4 years of age. And so this is a way that you can get your kids out of the lounge room and into the backyard. And even if it's just a little job that they have to do, you tend to find 9 times out of 10 that once they're there, they'll start chatting with the chooks, sitting with the chooks and looking at other things with the chooks, and the chooks will chat back with them, and it becomes a very nice bonding experience for everyone.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. And like, for example, my children love going into the coop and just walking around with them and touching them. And it's just, it's a big part of, I guess, as humans, it's a big part of our ancestors in a way, back when nearly everybody had a farm. Or nearly everybody lived on a farm in some capacity. Like it's a part of being human, but it's something that we don't get to see as much these days because so many people live closer to the city and there's units these days and all these different things.
It's that connection with nature, feet in the sand, that sort of thing is that we just don't tend to have unless you really look for it. And the other thing is too that I find interesting is people often say, remember when our grandparents had all of these chickens? And I'm thinking, I do. I mean, they were savage buggers, and I didn't want to go down the chook pen because, there would be anywhere between 20 and 40, and some were missing an eye, and it was quite a fearful place because it was so far away from the house.
Yep.
So it was a bit of an adventure to go and collect the chickens, and you didn't know whether there was going to be a snake sitting in the laying box and the rooster would chase you, or the geese, would chase you. So all of that was a bit of a hassle, whereas now the chicken coops are very close to the house, and people want them not just as egg producers and scrap eaters, but they want them as their pets. They want that interaction for themselves and for their children. And it's a bit like, I say to people, it's a bit like owning a goldfish bowl. Sitting in the backyard with a glass of wine or a beer or a coffee or a tea, watching the chickens fiddle around is incredibly therapeutic and really brings you into the now. I think that's what I'm trying to say, so that you forget your worries and you're just there with that little bit of nature happening in front of you.
Yeah, yes. And one of the biggest benefits we can't forget is the eggs,
Oh,
that you've
totally.
already
Yeah,
mentioned. Like,
that's right.
I haven't bought eggs in a very long time. I had to buy eggs, I think, about 3 years ago for
Oh,
something.
wow.
And I bought the jumbo eggs. I made sure I got like the organic or whatever. I just literally got the best I possibly could because I know how different they are
Yeah,
to what I am used to.
yeah.
And it still tasted nowhere as good as the eggs that I have. It was still much smaller than the eggs that I get from my backyard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Like, there's nothing like fresh eggs that you literally, that are 24 hours, if not hours old, being in your kitchen,
For sure, for sure. And
you know.
there are interesting stories around eggs, like people will come in, customers will come and say, I want the biggest eggs possible. I don't want to go into the egg aisle. And so we'll steer them toward, hybrid egg layers, which are the chickens that you probably own. So they're your
Yes.
working girl style chicken, lays for about 18 months straight and then just goes into a rapid decline. But they lay eggs that are huge. And but there's a problem that comes with that. And that is because they're a manufactured breed
Yep.
that has been there to fulfill this egg fetish with people.
Yes.
What happens is that you can end up with a lot more reproductive issues in those chickens than you can with, say, the more heritage birds. And the bulk
Okay.
of our business now with city chicks is heritage breeds. So birds
Okay.
that lay for up to 6 years instead of 18 months, that live for 10 or 12 instead of just, living for 3 or 4, and
Yep.
and have a more natural laying style instead of having that manufactured intensive
Okay.
egg laying pattern.
So they'll lay maybe 2 eggs a week or 3
They'll lay
type of thing.
every day when they're on, and then
Yep.
when they have a break through summer or winter, or if they're having a break when they go broody, then
Yes.
that's when you won't get any eggs at all. But that's nature's break time for them. It's
Yeah.
time for them for their bodies to replenish minerals and calcium, and get ready then for the next 3 months of laying. Whereas
Yeah.
the hybrid egg laying chickens, they don't have that opportunity. It's a bit sort of rape and pillage of calcium, and their bones become quite depleted, and the systems become quite depleted. So once people have an understanding of the difference of those in those types of chickens, then they can stop and think and say, how do I feel about that? Do I want to support, these sort of McDonald chickens, or do I want to support the more heritage breeds, or, what do I want? So people can make a decision based on their own choice then, instead of just turning up and saying, this is what we've got and you've got to go home with that,
100%. Like, I literally just learned something
Yeah.
just then.
I thought I might have taught you something before. Oh, no,
Yeah.
you want to know about this or not?
The other thing as well, you mentioned a word. There's 2 words which I initially had no idea what they meant, but it'd be really good if you could briefly explain them. The first one was brood,
Yeah.
or it's like when a chicken's brooding. And the second was that I've discovered as well is when they're clucky.
Sure.
Because these are 2 really interesting behaviours of chickens.
It is, that's right. So, and they mean the same thing. So a chook being clucky or a chook being broody is the same thing. So nature creates a surge of estrogen in chickens when they then want to sit on fertile eggs. That's in nature what happens. So even though
Yes.
chickens will lay eggs, say the heritage breeds that do go broody, say they lay eggs for 7 months of the year, well, all of a sudden they'll lay, and then they'll want to sit. And you'll go down to the backyard into the chicken coop one morning, and then there'll be a chicken refusing to get off the eggs, and they fluff up at you and, get a bit angry with you. And that's their message saying, I'm going to sit on some fertile eggs and try to hatch them out. And even if they've got no fertile eggs under them, if they've only got a rock under them or a razor blade under them, they'll still sit and refuse to hop off. And normally in nature that is only for 21 days, so 3 weeks, because that's how long it takes to incubate an egg from point of fertilization to hatch.
Okay.
But if you don't have a fertile egg, the chicken gets a bit confused, and so she'll sit and she'll sit and she'll sit. And she really has no idea what's going on. And that's why we've got customers that will come in saying, we've got a chicken that's been sitting for 6 to 8 weeks. What do I do? And we talk to them about what they can do in that situation. So, and chickens are pretty clever. They turn their eggs a number of times during the day. So if an egg is fertile, they can instinctively understand the weight gain in that egg, and will understand that each time they turn it, they're picking up a vibe from how the egg's going, whether it's growing or not.
Wow.
so that 3 days before that 21, they stop the turning process and they allow that air sac to rise and then the chicks to pip and breathe that air and then cracking out through the top of that eggshell and come on out. So, I mean, that whole process is pretty incredible when you sort of understand how strong that instinct is.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And also, I mean, this is very obvious, but again, somebody that isn't that experienced with chickens wouldn't really know. But just to clarify to those that are listening, there's a big difference between a chicken and a rooster. So a rooster is a male version.
That's correct, yeah.
And roosters are the ones that make that sound in the morning when the sun goes up.
Yeah, we call it a crow, that noise, yes.
Yeah, when they crow. Yeah. And chickens lay eggs.
Yes.
And just because they're laying an egg without a rooster, that can't possibly hatch into anything.
That's correct. So
that's just 101
yeah,
birds and the bees for those listening.
That's right. So you don't need a rooster in order for a chicken to lay an egg, but that egg will be an unfertilized egg. And
Yes.
And she will try to sit on that when she goes broody because she still thinks that it could potentially be fertile. But, of course, nothing's going to come out of it.
Yeah, that's it. And I know this is it's very obvious to those that have know a bit about chickens, but again, it's something I get asked a lot as well. You say, "Oh, do they make noise in the morning?" I go, "Oh, no, they're not roosters." And they go, "Oh, what's the difference between a rooster and a chicken?" So it's
yeah, and roosters are illegal, mind you. We do have a crow collar that stops a lot of the crowing. That's sort of like a city product that's evolved through demand. But generally, though, we don't advise anyone to hang on to roosters in the city because the complaints just come left, right and centre and you'll get in strife with the council.
Yeah. And just to clarify as well, and to ask this question,
sure.
When it comes to buying, if somebody has, for example, 2 chickens and they want to get more,
sure.
What I was told a while ago was that you need to sort of keep them in separate them so they don't fight and then slowly bring them together. And for that reason, when I bought my latest chickens, I just bought 5 all at once because I just thought it's easier to get them all now at the one time from the same group, I guess, instead of getting 2 now and getting a few more down the track. Would that be right?
That's one technique, definitely. We get a lot of our customers that do what we call stagger their flock. So they might start off with 3 because that's all their yard can handle. And then in 18 months' time, they might retire those girls and then go home with another 3. Or if you want to hang on to your birds, you might want to get another 2 and introduce them so that you don't have that 5 sitting there the whole time because that's a lot of eggs and that's a lot of Isa Browns running around your backyard, scratching things up. In a small backyard, they can do a lot of damage if you've got a lot of chickens, that's for sure. But so you can do it that way. But what we recommend is to keep your existing birds out in their free range area and lock up your new birds because your new birds need to have a homing instinct activated anyway. So they can stay inside the coop and then at night time you put everyone together so that they at least can understand that there's more birds there. And then first thing in the morning you do the same thing. Let those older birds out and keep the new ones locked in. So you do that for 3 days and then you open up the gates and let everyone go out so that you've got a chance then for the new birds to go about their business and the old birds to go about their business and you're not confining birds that are territorial. Otherwise, you're going to end up feathers in a bloodbath everywhere.
Yep. And on that note as well, you mentioned the word retire.
Sure.
If somebody has chickens and let's say they get to that point where they stop laying and they would like to get new ones,
sure.
How would you recommend that person?
Sure. So what we do as a business is we have discovered that there are some services needed for a city environment, and that includes things like retiring chickens where you can bring your chickens out to us and for a fee we'll courier them out to one of our ladies who raises chickens for us out near Laidley, Toowoomba area. So that creates a lot of peace of mind. We do the rooster rehoming service as well where they head up to our hatchery and hang out there with either the cows or they go into the bachelor pen. We do a duckling sleepover party for people who want to try ducks but don't want to own ducks. And we do chicken minding as well. We have a holiday service here at City Chicks. And, and so those services we're full with those all the time. It's birds are coming and going all the time because no one else really does it. And it's needed, because people don't really tend to know their neighbours too well anymore. So they don't know who to ask to look after their chickens and they can't keep a rooster, but they've got one. And, what am I going to do? I can't kill it. I can't twist its neck. And so this is just an easy option. So we tend to sort of handle that problem for people.
Yeah. And isn't that sad that we don't talk to our neighbours as much as we used to?
Well, it is what it is, I suppose. It's I don't know whether it's so much people are busy. It's just people's fences are very high now, and their houses are very private, and it is what it is. But you look at things like COVID happening, and people come into their yards and start reconnecting again. So I think it's just, I don't know. Every place is different. Then you can have neighbours that are horribly annoying as well. So maybe it's good not to have them hanging around at the same time. But chickens are quite lovely in order to bring neighbours together, and bees too, which is probably another topic for another day. But when neighbours know that you've got chooks, they tend to sort of ask, how are your chickens going? It's a point of conversation they can immediately start with, and know that you can have a 1 or 2 minute exchange, and that's quite lovely.
Yeah, and with me, when we have extra eggs, we give them to the neighbours as well.
Oh, that's lovely. Good on you. That's nice.
Which is nice, yeah. So it's always good to share them around.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping today, whoever's listening to this has learned a lot. I mean, I've learned a few things actually myself. But I really hope today will encourage a lot of people listening that have probably thought of getting chickens to take the dive. If people want to learn more, Ingrid, what's the best way for them to contact City Chicks?
Sure. So we have our own website at citychicks.com.au. Otherwise, we are open 7 days a week out here at Sanford. And we do have where our chicken paddock is, we open that up on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings between 9 and 11. If you've got littlies or you want to come and experience feeding the chickens or the turkey or the ducks or the geese, you can do that for a $2 donation. And or give us a call, 328-93-007, and we can talk through what you need. But it's fascinating. Chicken owning is fascinating, and the way that the trend is for chicken owning at the moment is there's a whole avenue of chicken toys now being invented as boredom buster ideas. There's a whole range of aromatherapy for chickens now because people are worried that the chickens aren't, smelling the old smells of the old days. If you had a
paddock with cows,
a rainforest behind you and that sort of thing, So there's some really funky things going on in my industry, and we're right in there. I love all that stuff. Right in there with it all. We have our own toy section, which is hilarious, and chicken nappies and tutus for them and helmets for them and all sorts of things. Kids love it. Even though they may not buy one, they look at it and think, wow, that sparks my imagination and my curiosity, and I just think it's great. I love it.
Oh, honestly, I could tell, honestly, and I can tell the enthusiasm and the passion is definitely there.
Thanks, Michael.
It's so exciting, honestly. Yeah. And for those that don't follow City Chicks on Facebook, highly recommend it. There's always some good videos to watch.
That's right. Yeah, my videos, just excuse the sweaty face.
And one last thing, by the way, Ingrid, with all my episodes, I'll have to finish off with a dad joke.
Oh, right, okay.
And I've got a good one at today's, by the way. It suits the topic. But what is the most musical part of a chicken?
What's the most musical part of a chicken?
Yeah, the drumstick.
Oh, that's really bad. And I'm not going to repeat that to any of my customers.
Yeah, okay. That's all right. I'll tell the kids. Tell the kids love my jokes.
Nice. All right, then.
Thank you, Ingrid. Appreciate it so much.
No worries. Thank you, then. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.